Tim lay on his hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile white walls of the room. Machines beeped rhythmically, monitoring the failing state of his frail body. The soft hum of the ventilator and the occasional murmur of nurses in the hallway were the only sounds that pierced the otherwise suffocating silence. Tubes snaked around his thin limbs, their cold touch a stark contrast to the warmth of his imagination, the only place where he had found solace throughout his life. His days had been spent battling a relentless illness that robbed him of the simple joys of childhood and adolescence. Tim's body, fragile and uncooperative, confined him to this bed, turning the outside world into a distant dream. While other boys played sports, went to school, and lived their lives, Tim's existence was measured in doses of medication and the sterile antiseptic scent of the hospital. Yet, in the midst of this grim reality, Tim discovered a portal to boundless worlds and possibilities. Books, stacked high on his bedside table, piled under his bed, and even tucked under his pillow, books became his companions and his teachers. Through them he journeyed to distant lands, fought in epic battles, and uncovered the secrets of ancient civilizations. He absorbed the intricacies of military strategies, the nuances of economic theories, and the delicate art of various crafts. Tim's mind was a vast library, meticulously organized with knowledge from countless volumes. He could recount the Battle of Thermopylae with the precision of a historian, explain the principles of supply and demand like a seasoned economist, and describe the process of glass-blowing as if he had spent years in a workshop. In his imagination, he was a general commanding armies, a merchant navigating trade routes, and an artisan perfecting his craft. As his illness progressed, Tim's body weakened, but his mind remained sharp and vibrant. The nurses, who had grown fond of the quiet boy with the inquisitive mind, often marveled at his intellect. They listened as he recounted tales of ancient wars and described the processes of soap-making and glass-blowing. In their eyes, he was not just a patient, but a young sage, wise beyond his years. The day finally came when Tim's frail body could no longer keep up with his indomitable spirit. The doctors had done all they could, and his parents, their faces etched with grief, stood by his side, holding his hands. The machines that had been his lifeline now seemed to mock the inevitable. Tim, though, was not afraid. He had read enough to understand that death was not an end, but a transition. With each labored breath, Tim felt himself growing lighter. He closed his eyes, picturing the scenes from his favorite books. He saw the rolling plains of medieval battlefields, the bustling markets of ancient cities, and the quiet, serene workshops of master craftsmen. A sense of peace washed over him, a welcome reprieve from the constant pain and struggle. His last breath was a sigh of relief, a gentle whisper of farewell to the world that had been his prison. As the rhythmic beeping of the machines turned into a continuous drone, Tim's consciousness faded. His parents wept, and the nurses stood in silent reverence, knowing they had witnessed the passing of a remarkable soul. But for Tim, it was not the end. As his vision dimmed and the sensations of the hospital room faded away, he felt a strange, comforting warmth envelop him. The weight of his illness lifted, and for the first time he felt free. The knowledge he had amassed in his short life swirled within him, a beacon guiding him towards something new and wondrous. In his final moments, Tim had no way of knowing that this was just the beginning of a new journey. A journey that would see him reborn in a world where his vast knowledge and indomitable spirit would lead him to greatness. As Tim slipped into the darkness, he carried with him the light of countless worlds, ready to shine once more in a new life. Darkness faded into a blur of muted sounds and hazy shapes. Tim's senses stirred from an unfathomable abyss, his mind emerging like a diver breaking through the surface of a deep sea. Yet instead of feeling free, He was enveloped in warmth and a crushing weight, unable to move, unable to breathe. Then, a sharp gasp filled his lungs, and Tim let out an involuntary cry. A wail so piercing it echoed off walls. The cold air stung his fragile, wet skin, and his world exploded with sensation, rough hands holding him, the scrape of a coarse cloth against his tiny form, and the overwhelming scent of sweat and damp straw. Where am I? Disoriented and overwhelmed, Tim's mind reeled. His memories were jumbled. He remembered his body failing him, the sterile white of a hospital room, the rhythmic beep of machines. But now, all of that was gone, replaced by sensations both alien and familiar. Is this death? A dream? But even in his confusion, something undeniable was clear. He was alive, painfully so. He squirmed, his body responding sluggishly, the movements clumsy and uncoordinated. Panic surged as he realized the truth. He was no longer in control. His limbs were small and weak, his cries uncontrollable, his vision blurred. Tim's mind screamed, but his tiny mouth only issued another helpless wail. As he struggled, he was cradled against a warm, soft surface. The rhythmic thudding of a heartbeat soothed him, calming his panic. He could hear a gentle, shushing sound, a soft voice murmuring in a language that was both foreign and strangely familiar. "Shh! There, my sweet boy," the voice whispered, shaky yet filled with relief. Gradually, his vision cleared, and Tim could make out the blurry outline of a face. A woman, her features gaunt but kind, her eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion, gazed down at him with a mixture of joy and exhaustion. This woman. His mother? Tim's mind struggled to comprehend the impossible. He had been reborn, a baby once more, a helpless infant in a world that smelled of sweat, dirt, and something he couldn't quite place. But there was no denying it. The cries that erupted from his mouth, the tiny hands that flailed in the air, they were his own. The woman held him close, her warmth enveloping him. "Joran, look! He's strong. Our boy is strong," she called, her voice cracking with emotion. Tim's gaze shifted with effort to the other side of the dim, cramped room. There, a man with a rough, unshaven face approached, his eyes wide with wonder. He was tall and broad-shouldered, though his clothes were patched and threadbare. He looked at Tim with a mix of pride and relief, kneeling beside the woman. "Aye, Maria," the man, his father, replied softly, his voice roughened by years of hard labor. "The gods be kind. Our son lives." The room was little more than a shack, its walls made of rough-hewn planks that did little to keep out the cold wind that howled from outside. The flicker of a single tallow candle cast dancing shadows on the walls. In one corner, a threadbare blanket covered a pile of straw that served as a bed. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the acrid smoke from a small, struggling hearth. Tim's new parents were clearly poor, living on the outskirts of a great city. Their home was a ramshackle shelter in the infamous slums that clung like a parasite to the edges of the empire's capital. He had read about such places in countless books, districts where the air was choked with the stench of sewage and decay, where desperate souls struggled just to survive another day. As Tim's cries subsided, his mother held him close, her tears falling onto his tiny forehead. He could feel her love, her relief, but also the fear that lingered behind her eyes. They were poor, their clothes worn thin, their bodies lean with hunger. He could hear it in the whispered conversation that followed between his parents. "How will we feed him, Joran?" Maria asked in a low, worried tone, her fingers trembling as she caressed Tim's soft cheek. "We can barely feed ourselves." Joran clenched his jaw, his gaze fixed on the flickering flame of the candle. "We'll find a way," he said with a grim determination. "He's a fighter, this one. Look at him. We just need to keep going, one day at a time. Tim's infant mind was swimming, torn between the instincts of his new body and the sharp clarity of his old mind. He was no longer a frail, dying boy trapped in a hospital bed. He had been given a second chance, a new life. But this new world was harsh, and it was clear that survival would be a struggle. I've been reborn in a world where knowledge could mean the difference between life and death. He had once read about the harsh realities of medieval life, about famine, disease, and the merciless indifference of those in power. He would need to remember everything he had learned if he was to navigate this world. For now, though, he was just a baby, utterly dependent on the two people who held him. His body was weak, but his mind remained sharp. As he nestled against his mother's chest, listening to her soft heartbeat, Tim began to plan. It would be years before he could walk, speak, or do anything of consequence, but he had time. Time to understand this world, to learn its language, its customs, and its secrets. Because one thing was certain, this world, harsh as it was, would not break him. He would rise, he would thrive, and one day he would shape his own destiny.
This video is just a promo for my book, which is on sale right now at gumroad.com. For more details, see the description.